Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with Ron Ames from The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the amazing new series from Amazon, which, ties into the trilogy in an interesting way. Peter Jackson's original trilogy had some groundbreaking visuals in it. This series kind of visually fits within that world, but is its own thing and makes its own mark with very distinct creative choices. So I'm very curious how you kind of managed that visual identity of this show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Well, when working on such an incredible project as Rings of Power, we approached it with a bit of reverence, and Peter's work was, it was groundbreaking, and his perspective was unique, and we wanted to make sure that the audience wasn't confused, that they knew they were in Middle Earth. And in fact, I could tell the story that when we showed episode 1 and 2, and J.D. Payne, one of our showrunners, was in and amongst a bunch of real diehard fans, and they saw the first 2 episodes, and they said, yes, this is Middle Earth. He almost started to cry, and he said, that's all I wanted. And it's true. We were really, really interested in making sure that we landed in the world that was described not only by Peter Jackson, who was an interpretation of Tolkien, but Tolkien himself was so clear with maps and storytelling. And there's a famous quote where he says, we start with a map. You can't tell a story without starting with a map. So we did the same. We try to find the map of Middle Earth and how it played and what was going to be different about ours. And there were some all storytelling purposes for the difference. It wasn't difference just to be different. It was, it's a different age. It is a different time. And in some ways, it's a prequel. We're 1,000 or thousands of years before Peter's show and the trilogy. So we are in a world of proto-hobbits and a world that was much younger and different. And the elves were different, and they were fresh, and it was a whole different thing. So, but we wanted to make sure the audience landed in a world that was familiar and still stayed true to Tolkien and honored Peter Jackson's vision.
Yes. And you're a producer on this series, handling a lot of the technical design elements. I'm curious, compared to some of your past work where you were solely maybe working as a visual effects supervisor, what is the sort of breadth of your producer role? How does that help you create this world you're looking for?
When we started the project, and Lindsay Weber, our executive producer, asked me to join the project, the notion was that we were going to have an integrated view of the technical department, that we would be looking at this, that there wouldn't be a separation from art department, editorial, music, that all of it could be worked together. And that was, the collaboration was one of the main features. And so by producing those different departments, and we had fantastic talent. I mean, Jake Rice was our post-production supervisor and producer, and we had Jesse Kobayashi was my partner in visual effects, and Jason Smith from ILM. We had a fantastic team. They all ran their departments, and and working with our music and sound departments, it was really a fantastic team. But by having my role be basically a unifier, bringing all those departments together in a way that really, I think, is a unique way of doing it. And it was required when you do 8 hours of feature quality broadcast. You have to have that connection.
Right. It's a very holistic approach, it sounds like.
It was.
Which it seems this, as you said, it is cinematic. These are like giant feature films, but does that mean you had like a feature film timeline? What was that like? Was it a truncated timeline to do this in?
It was not a feature film timeline, and it was and it's more than most television shows, but this new form of a broadcast with Game of Thrones, Stranger Things. There's a little more room than a normal show, but at the same time, it was an industrial project to get done in the time we had. There was 9,000 visual effects. There's 7,000 hours of dailies. I mean, it's a huge amount of material to be managed, and that was part of the joy of it, was that we did so with collaboration. So Kate Hawley, who designed the costumes, was talking to Ramsey Avery, who was doing the production design, who was talking to Jason Smith, our visual effects supervisor, to come up with a unified vision and storytelling, and it all informed the various pieces.
Yeah. And I think, every episode here is really huge, but I do feel like when we reached episode 6, Udun, that really took it to a next level. And there's this huge battle between the orcs and men with Numenorians riding in, right in the nick of time. When you have a set piece, an action set piece that big, what's your process in terms of figuring out where we're going to go digital effects versus what needs to be accomplished practically?
I love that question. It is part of our process to very carefully break down and use every tool at our disposal. So Vic Armstrong, who was our second unit director and is actually one of the most famous stuntmen in the world. I mean, to be with Indiana Jones was terrific. And he's a wonderful filmmaker. He had a vision of a classic horse battle. And so he laid that out in a pitch. It was several pages long. From that, we started to break it down with Charlotte Branson, our director, and Alex Dissenhoff, our DP, and Jason Smith, our visual effects supervisor, and starting working out where could we do things practically. And it really is it is a sleight of hand kind of operation. It's like you don't put the thing that you would expect to be CG. You put the thing that you don't expect to be CG to be CG, and therefore you don't know where that handoff is. So, for example, again, we couldn't have too many horses too close together because of the danger both to the animals and the human beings. So we would set up the action as if it was going to be a full battle, and then we take out the pieces that were either in the background or were in the direct foreground, and we then did either CG or duplicative. We would shoot with motion control, which was another thing we did a lot of on the show, is motion control as first unit. So we would have repeat cameras that would do one piece of action and then bring in the next piece of action. So it was broken down as exquisitely as possible because of safety. And also then within that, in the background, there'd be some really cool battle pieces that we'd take from one scene and put in another. So we were always filling the background and sometimes the foreground with both CG and shots that we put together as pieces.
Well, one thing I'm sure you must have had to do with CG was the unfortunate but epic eruption of Mount Doom. And I think Tolkien in the books describes it as a similar size and height to Mount Vesuvius, actually. So I was wondering, did you look at real life eruptions and, did you have to enhance them, or did you want to present them as a realistic
Again,
eruption?
great question. Our process was, yes, there was nothing in our show and no visual effect or special effect for that matter that wasn't based on physics. So at no point do we just say, oh, it's magical. It truly had to have a physical reality, and it may be not physics of our usual experience. But in this particular case, we went and looked at wildfires, and there's amazing photography of people who are in wildfires, iPhone shots, and we went and studied Pompeii and all the way back to ancient eruptions and what that experience is like, what people's reaction to that is, both emotionally, creatively, artistically, and then graphically with photography of actual real eruptions, Mount St. Helens, the smoke, the flame, the quality of all of that, and that's what we brought to it. So that was part of it, and we looked at that against what we created, the water flowing through the dams coming into creating that steam pressure. We looked at the physics of all of that, and that's how we came up with it. So it is all based on reality. There's nothing, even the ice climb at the beginning of the show is based on a real. We went to ice walls and shot photogrammetry and went to there in the middle of winter in our helicopters and rappelled out, and I mean, it was really fun.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Well,
So
there's a
everything
lot.
based on real stuff.
Yeah, it's in that episode and the series as a whole, there's a lot of effects based on natural elements, which is appropriate because Tolkien liked the natural world. But I've often heard they're the most difficult aspects to bring to life with digital effects in a very realistic way. Did you find that to be the case on this series?
It is, and we brought a great deal of energy to. So, for example, Khazad-dûm, we went into caves in New Zealand, and we did textures in the caves, and we took photographs in there and brought that reality and put that into our extensions. So it's all based on real rock formations and things that do exist. The waterfalls and everything else either were natural, real waterfalls that we photographed and brought in, or we photographed them as examples and matched them. So truly, the physical world, we included the physical world, and then made it into the fantastic thing that it became. But all based on.
Yes. And I loved the after effects of the Mount Doom eruption because everything is just a total cataclysm. Like everything is just caked in this thick ash and the sky's red. How long did it take to achieve that like very extreme look?
So that was a process that we started with, as you described, and as I was telling you, we got footage of um, real events, uh, including a 9/11, what the photography of that was, and we saw what ash is and how the light is held out and the spectrum of light changes. We worked with Alex Dissenhoff and our visual effects team and special effects, and then started working with ash, and went into a forest and said, okay, if we had extreme, only shoot in the shadows, darken everything down, drop ash, real ash that was paper ash that wouldn't hurt the environment, because again, we have to clean everything that we drop. It can't hurt trees or plants or bushes or anything like that. New Zealand is a very delicate ecology, and we wanted to respect and make sure that we didn't mess anything up. So, but we did all of that, and then we worked with how to exclude light with filtration, and then enhance it and add fires and more ash and foreground pieces in visual effects. So it's a pastiche of multiple techniques, but including snow blankets and a lot of work went into it. But
Yeah.
we by the time we started shooting it, we had a methodology, so we would come in, it would be prepared. We weren't figuring it out. We knew and had tested the color pipeline and all of the rest, and worked with Alex very carefully to come up with that look.
Well, all those visual effects, you've already won a Visual Effects Society award for episode 6. So congratulations on that. And what does it feel like to have it? It just seems like an immense amount of work, especially from your position as a unifier. What does it feel like to have it recognized in that way?
It was the VES night was a really wonderful. There's so much good work this year. There are so many wonderful shows. It's like, oh my God! So to be recognized by one's peers is a great honor. And Jim Cameron was there, and I had worked with Jim on Avatar, and a lot of our friends were there, and everybody was. It was lovely. It was lovely to be seen and to share, and that all the work that was done by all of those hands were recognized. So and we had 15 vendors across the world doing it, small shops in ILM and Weta and Rodeo, and just a whole host of really great artists. So to have them recognized was a great joy. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there's more seasons coming, which we're really looking forward to. I know I am. And I'm wondering, looking ahead, was there one specific lesson that you learned on this ambitious first season that you are really going to carry with you moving forward?
Yes. So thank you. That again, that's a great question. There was a tons of lessons. I've worked on huge shows. I worked on Avatar 1. I've worked on, and Jason Smith has done our visual effects supervisor. He supervised every show. Um, what we came away with is that um, the the future of modern filmmaking is really about collaboration, removing silos, notions of visual effects as something that is unique or that is like CG. It isn't that. It is an integrated vision of making films what they've always been, stories of the heart, but having new tools to do it. So we came away with a great respect for the collaborative process and sharing from the very beginning and working as teams. We hope the work represents that, but that's how we felt about it. And if you ask Kate Hawley or Ramsey, they will say, we've never had so much visual effects connections, and it's true. And even Bear McCreary and the music was involved very early and had the visuals had to do with the music, and the music had to do with the visuals, and the sound effects, and everything was of a piece. So that's what we tried to do. So hopefully that was seen.
I think it's very much seen and comes together quite beautifully. So thank you, Ron, so much for discussing it with me. Everyone out there watching, subscribe to Gold Derby. Stay with us for the rest of the season. Ron, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sal.